real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon for all their support, because without their help, the upgraded content that you see on the channel, that you really see in the video essays and a few of the lore discussions, would not be possible without their help. But over on the Patreon, you get sneak peeks of videos months in advance. Patrons also get priority on the Q&As. Every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul, and I give away a lot of good goodies in that. And it's also just really cool to talk to you guys in the DMs, and if some of you guys have theories that you want me to talk about on the channel, obviously I will talk about your theories. Just send them to me over on the Patreon. But with that being said, let's get into the review. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode 257. And now that episode 257 is done in the books, we got a little bit to talk about on this episode right here. So obviously it's titled Konohamaru Becomes a Hokage, and this was a fun little episode in the sense of you get to see Konohamaru briefly kind of carry out his dream of becoming the next Hokage, and in a way you actually see that Konohamaru isn't actually worthy to be Hokage. I will touch on that later on. This is actually something interesting enough to actually talk about later on in a separate video, whether or not he's worthy to be Hokage. My stance on Konohamaru actually changed this episode. Now, don't get it twisted. For the most part, this is still a fun, lighthearted episode. Naruto opens up where he's looking at the movie and he's realizing, like, I was supposed to be in the Evil Jammer Kagemasa new movie, and I can't actually be in the movie because I have to take Himawari to the hot spring because Himawari won that trip. That's going to be the very next episode that we're seeing. And essentially he's getting flashbacks to the moment where during the Masashi Kishimoto one shot where Naruto became Hokage, you had Himawari knock out Naruto by targeting all of his chakra points. Naruto still got a little bit of PTSD from that. I thought that was kind of funny, but essentially the idea that they come up with for dealing with this is that Naruto's going to take time off to spend time with his family, but Konohamaru is going to be the one that's going to be doing the stand-in for him, and Konohamaru is going to be playing Naruto. And for the most part, when Konohamaru gets onto the set, it's pretty straightforward. Konohamaru gets there and he brings up something that a lot of people were asking when they saw the still images for the episode, saying, why does Konohamaru have these lines on him? Why does Konohamaru have like the goofy expression? Why don't they have him use the transformation jutsu? Essentially, Konohamaru in the episode says the same thing where he's like, you don't have to do makeup. I can just use a transformation jutsu and look just like the Hokage. But that was all part of the episode script, because essentially what they're doing is they're using CGI to fill in everything. And what I like that you see there is that there's actually some similarities to how big studios like Marvel Studios would do, like just how Thor Love and Thunder right now, they have a lot of LED background technology that isn't actually finished. So when you see it in the movie theater, the CGI isn't finished. The CGI won't be finished until 6 to 8 weeks. They did the same thing with Infinity War and Endgame. They did it with Spider-Man Far From Home. Well, you're seeing something similar here, to where when they're shooting, there's no background. There's just a green screen, and they're doing a lot of post-production to fill in everything, and they're doing the CGI to make Konohamaru look closer to Naruto, but you can tell based off the footage they got that he doesn't look all the way like Naruto. Is still something that's in the actual process of getting done. So I did like seeing that realism angle kind of thrown into the episode that way. And you have this moment where Konohamaru, when he's talking to the director's like, it'll be easy, just stand in front of the screen, say the lines, don't worry about the enthusiasm. And essentially the first part of the episode deals with the director and some of the people on the staff not being fully passionate about it because they've been trying to conform to this new producer, which that in itself is a very meta reference, because a big part of the reason why you have some movies that don't actually work when it's adapting source materials to stuff is there's no passion behind the project. It's just something that's done by the studio in order to make a quick buck. And so you kind of see it where even the actor that plays Kagemasa, he's passionate, but he's mailing it in to a certain extent because he's just done so much that the flame for how he actually acted in the movies wasn't there anymore. Everything's changed. He can't do his own stunts and etc. And so you have this one guy that does CGI that wants to be a director, where he's got the passion, he's got that flame, and you had the moment where they talked them into going out and going into the actual Leaf Village and filming inside the village, and a lot of good scenes actually shot and put on camera. But the producer's like, well, you didn't follow my script, you didn't do things the way I wanted to do it. Therefore, he takes the camera and he slams it onto the ground and he fires everybody onto the set, and Konohamaru gets told, you're gonna show up for work as normal. And what I like right here is that Konohamaru, for a moment, he gets excited about the idea of playing the Hokage and being in the Hokage outfit and etc. But when Konohamaru is kind of disrespected in that sense, you see a little bit of his enthusiasm, which was already leaving. It begins to hit that rock bottom, and the episode transitions over on the back half of the episode where the guy that was doing the CGI, Konohamaru takes them to some type of a dive bar with Konoha where they're having their drinks and etc. And they talk about how they're gonna go ahead and try and film anyway. And the director's like, well, we can't do anything. Everybody's down in the dumps. The kid ends up going to his bank to try and draw out his life savings. And when Konohamaru sees the news report, he sees that the kid's being held hostage. He goes onto the scene. He's still dressed up like the Hokage. And one of the people that Konohamaru ends up fighting here ends up in a situation where he says, you're just cosplaying the Hokage. That's so uncool of you right there. And you see Konohamaru really take that to heart right there. And to a certain extent, it's actually kind of sad to see that Konohamaru, this is the first real fight where Konohamaru's actually done something alone since the Jugo fight where he's been by himself. Like, Konohamaru's kind of been shafted right here, and he takes out the crooks very easily. They end up being the parents of the guy, and Konohamaru is all in Naruto mode. He tries to use a talk no jutsu. It's a line that comes from the Kagemasa movie, and he tries to appeal to the guy, and the guy's getting the flashbacks, and it looks like talk no jutsu is gonna work. And he's like, wait a second, you just knocked out my parents. He takes a paper bomb and he says he's gonna blow up the whole area. And what ends up happening after this is that Konohamaru, after he tells the police force to get everybody out of there, and the director, he's been so inspired by everything that he's taken the camera and he's recorded everything. Konohamaru takes the paper bomb, he flings it up into the air after Kagemasa's actor shows up and actually participates in the battle. The paper bomb's strong to blow up the entire area. Konohamaru takes his Rasengan, jumps up into the air, and because you have all that spinning wind that's coming from the Rasengan, he's able to contain the output of the explosion. And Konohamaru has a very beautifully done scene where you see his hair flapping, you see the contrasting of the colors. Konohamaru has the explosion go off, he lands on the ground. Konohamaru is a little out of breath right here, but it was in that moment right there, for me personally, while that was a really cool scene, it kind of made me look at it and say, he's not really worthy of becoming Hokage. And the reason being is that he showed up with the intention of stopping the robbers. Sure, cool, that's awesome, but when it became a situation where there were a lot of people's lives at stake, he made the right call at first to say, well, maybe we should just go through with it and get everybody out of here. But he was hesitating. He didn't make a quick decision. That paper bomb took the longest amount of time ever to actually blow up. You have to be able to make those quick decisions right there on the spot. You don't need somebody to inspire you and get you to that call to action. And that right there, that little bit of hesitation, it kind of leads me into the whole thing of like, Konohamaru's a good teacher, Konohamaru's a good Jonin, but not everybody that's a talented Jonin is actually of that Kage level. It's not necessarily about how much destructive damage you can do. There are other intangibles that are needed to be a good Hokage, and really just in the real world, not everybody that's a good worker is going to make a good boss. And that's kind of where Konohamaru's at right there. And I like how what this episode does is that when Konohamaru does get himself into gear, he's thinking, well, the type of Hokage I want to be like my grandfather, the third Hokage. I want to be like one of my teachers, Naruto, the seventh Hokage. That's the type of person I want to be. And essentially, when Konohamaru comes to that realization, he detonates the paper bomb and he uses the Rasengan in order to stop the output of the explosion. The movie ends up getting finished and they're using a lot of that information, and the episode ends off where it has Konohamaru and he's sharpening his blade and he's thinking to himself about how when he was in the Hokage office, Shikamaru said like, yo, like your blade hasn't been sharpened. Konohamaru's sharpening his blade and he's thinking to himself, you never need to forget where you came from. So playing Naruto essentially was a moment where Konohamaru got his Hokage dreams reignited right here. This is just a fun in-between episode meant to give Konohamaru something to do, because as you guys know, in the manga right now, Konohamaru, the next big thing he's going to be doing when the anime adapts the stuff is that when you have Team 7 and they have the sparring match and Kawaki snaps on everybody, Konohamaru's just going to be watching and overseeing the training session, and Naruto's going to stop him from stepping in when Kawaki goes too crazy. Konohamaru doesn't do much of anything, so this is just a awesome opportunity to give Konohamaru a little bit more to do. This ain't going to be an episode that I personally am going to come back to unless it ends up paying off something later on in the manga, which I highly doubt. This is one of the few episodes that I will say is a filler episode. I know that Ikimoto and Kodachi a few years ago, like in 2017, were stressing the fact that the anime and the manga are parallel stories and that the anime fills in a lot of the gaps of stuff that the manga can't do. Therefore, you should not consider anything in the anime to be filler, but this one doesn't contribute anything. Like the last arc we just got out of, the last arc actually set up quite a few things that correlate with the Code arc and show us how Boruto gets to the thought process he has. But this right here, this ain't adding nothing to it. So I'm calling this one a filler. It is what it is. It's a transition episode. Not a big fan of it. But what I want to know from you guys is, do you guys think I'm too hard on Konohamaru? Do you guys think that he's actually worthy of being Hokage? Or do you think that this is going to be the closest he's ever gotten to it? And how would you fix Konohamaru going forward in the future? While you think that over, consider watching these other videos you see on the screen right now.